Hey everybody, welcome to session two for tonight. And we're really focusing on reasons tonight. So super excited to have Seth come back with us for the second night in a row and our third session overall. So like I said, I will send out links at the end of the week after I have everything up on YouTube if you've missed any of them. But tonight's night two of three nights in a row. I know we're hammering them out, bang, 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 but just kind of worked out the best for everybody's schedule on our end. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Seth. Remember, just be courteous of everybody. Keep yourself muted. You've got questions, hit them in the chat box, and we'll ask them for you or ask you to unmute at that point. All right, Seth, all yours.
Okay. So, hello again, for those of you guys that are returning, to the series, but, maybe we've got some newbies in the crew. Welcome aboard. My name's Seth Ebert. I'm the livestock judging coach at Ohio State ATI. And tonight's topic is reasons. So, one thing I'm going to say probably time and time again as we go through this stuff today, reasons are nothing to be scared of. I hear it all the time in Ohio. We're very far behind in terms of reasons, as a state. Um, and well, I just don't want to give reasons because I'm scared of them. There's nothing to be scared of. All you're doing is defending why you did what you did. And sometimes it's like I really like to express to students and team members, especially younger kids, that being in an uncomfortable situation like giving reasons is a very, very good thing. It will help you grow further than you think it will. And it is a necessity and must in life, in my opinion, if you're going to be a stock person. Okay. Um, the screen that I'm sharing right now, all right, the Word document you see here, the page on the left, where my mouse is right now. Hopefully, you guys can see my mouse. Um, that is a representation of what your steno notebook or blank white piece of paper should be set up as. Just imagine this is a piece of paper, and this is what I am doing on these pieces of paper when I am taking reasons notes. Because what are reasons notes? Reasons notes are a very organized version of my thoughts of how I placed the class the way I placed it. So, say in this example, I placed a class of Angus heifers 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So, just to work down through this, because sometimes I think it's better just to jump in and then make sure you guys in the chat box, please, 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 if you have questions, put them in there. I will answer them. I know reasons is kind of a tough beast sometimes for people to grasp, and that's okay. Okay. So we've obviously got the class name, which would be Angus heifers, my placing, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. I've tried to put in these boxes maybe a descriptor of what these boxes mean. So a brief description of individuals, animals, color, gender, unique markings. So IDs is what we call these in the livestock judging world. Okay. So next to number 1, I would look at the number 1 heifer in the class, and I would say, okay, these are Angus heifers. So obviously they're going to be black heifers. In the Angus breed, you could see some short switches. You could see some white flanks, especially around their udder, heavier naveled heifers, maybe ear notched heifers, things like that. Those are things you would put next to these numbers. So if they don't have an ID, that's perfectly fine. Okay. But if they do give you an ID, it helps you within a set of reasons describe or introduce the animal you're talking about with an actual physical ID. So in your boxes here, okay, the first box, the advantage of the class winner. Why do they win the class? Well, I'm just make-believing this class. So let's just say the number 1 heifer is the most feminine, best bodied, soundest structured, because in breeding females, we want good built, sound structured with enough muscle. Okay. So she does that to the highest degree. All right. And I'm going to use this box to say that. Okay. Now, just below, because this is kind of my opening, this is my opening statement. Okay. So, by that, I'm going to try to take this in baby steps. So, that's my opening statement. This is how a proper introduction to a class should be said in a set of reasons. 1, 2, 3, 4 is how I prefer or how I place the class of Angus heifers. I was quick to find the ultra feminine, sound structured brood cow in 1 to win. Okay. That is where I'm at right now. So I opened the set. I opened it as the feminine, sound structured brood cow in 1 to win. Okay. Now in the box below that, this is the advantages of 1/2. Okay. You want to be very black and white on these descriptors, grants, criticisms, everything. Don't be making stuff up. Be truthful. Okay. So why does 1 beat 2? Okay. Well, we're going to actually judge a class together so we can put some of those things in these boxes here after a bit. But like it could be things like she's bigger bodied, she's heavier muscled, she's sounder structured, she's more feminine. She is fresher. She is better on her rear pastern, better hoof shape, things like that. Okay. Now the big thing is right over here where it says grant for 2/1. Let's just think about that. Grant for 2/1. Okay. It's got to be something 2 is better at than 1. Okay. And then, so let's just say that the one heifer is a good built, sound structured one with enough muscle, but maybe 2 is stouter muscled, denser featured. So her grant could be stouter, denser featured, and heavier muscled. Okay. But her criticism, why does she go second? That's what you put in that box. So if she's got a grant over 1, why ultimately does she not go first? Well, let's be honest. If they're heavier muscled and they're denser featured, most of the time that kind of livestock comes with a little bit of structure flaws. I would maybe just guess in this make-believe class I'm putting in my mind. Let's just say that she's straighter and coarser jointed. Okay. But then I move down here. Why is 2 better than 3? So you criticized her, then you got to bring her in here. Okay. So before I go into that, I'm going to give you maybe a quick turn and burn type set here, very generic set. But 1, 2, 3, 4 is how I place the Angus heifers. And I was quick to find the ultra feminine, sound structured brood cow in 1 to win. Okay. Then I go into this box and describe. She's not only the tallest fronted heifer, who's the most feminine in terms of her head and neck, but she's the longest and levelest out of her hip, the soundest in terms of her rear leg, and then from the side, her lower body balance reads so maternal, so cowy. Okay, pause. My grant for 2/1. Now I can certainly see how 2 is the stouter, heavier muscled heifer, who's actually denser in terms of her feature. But I'm down here in this criticism box. But unfortunately, with that, she's actually straighter in the angle to her shoulder, actually coarser in terms of her joint. I like her second. Okay. So that is how you would open the set. That is your first paragraph. So I have discussed this much of this paper. Okay. Now you pause after your criticism. I just said she's a little too straight in her shoulder and coarser in her joint. But your transition into the middle could be a pause and then be, but drop her into the middle. And she's just the stouter, more genuine brood cow. Okay, so I'll use her to beat 3. Could be something that easy. Okay. Then you get into this grant box of 3/2. Okay. So if I'm going to use an opening for 2/3 as stouter, more genuine brood cow, okay, or she checks the brood cow basics of, stoutness and density, and yet still has a female look. whatever you want to say there. But then you got a grant 3/2. Or if there's not a grant, I should say this. Sometimes you get into some stock where there's just not a grant. You can always appreciate. You can always just say, she's another good built, sound structured one that just doesn't have enough muscle, whatever it may be. So let's just, for example, do that. Let's just say we're going to appreciate her. There's not a grant, Seth. She's not, I don't think she's sounder. She's not heavier muscle. She's actually a shallower bodied heifer. What do I need to say? Well, and I can say, after I say my opening, drop her into the middle. She's just a stouter, more genuine brood cow, and I'll use her to beat 3. Then you can say, sure, 3, or sure, 3 is, or let's say 3 is a bobtailed heifer. I'll use an ID. So sure, the bobtailed heifer. Okay, you see how I use that ID in a set? Sure, the bobtailed heifer is another good built, sound structured female. But the fact is, now I'm down here in the criticisms, but the fact remains, but the fact is, she's entirely too narrow in terms of her lower construction. She's actually flatter in terms of her body shape. Just reads to be quite a bit heavier conditioned. I like her 3rd. Okay. So that's the top, the middle pair. Now I'm down here in the bottom. So I criticized her. Now I got to come into the bottom pair. So you could make a transition of, but down low, which meaning down low means the bottom pair. But down low, she's still the sounder structured, better build option that offers more brood cow utility. Okay, so brood cow utility is a term that incorporates depth of body, fleshing ability, soundness of structure, brood cow utility, the things that make a good cow brood cow. That she still checks the boxes of still checks, still offers more in terms of brood cow utility. Okay, that's why she beats 4. Because then you get into the grant for 4, and you can use it as like a, I don't know why that keeps skipping back and forth. I'm sorry if that keeps showing paused or not paused. But as you get into this grant on 4/3, you can be a little sarcastic. It's a bottom pair player. You put that 4 heifer last, right? So, once you say she offers more in terms of brood cow utility for 3/4, you pause, come into your grant, because even though, um, because even though 4 is the later maturing, more extended female. Okay, that's her grant down here. Why 4 places last? She's the longer bodied, more extended female or whatever. Get into your fault. The fact remains that she's by some margin the narrowest constructed, lightest muscled, and hardest bodied heifer, who I question from a longevity standpoint. She's last. Say thank you, walk out of the room. Okay. That was a very basic set. Okay. And that's not to scare you, that's to give you an example of what that should sound like. So essentially, in a set of reasons, okay, you're starting here with your opening. You're going, it just it like tracks like this. Okay. If you guys can see my mouse, you're opening, your advantages, grant, criticism, advantages, grant, criticism, advantages, grant, criticism. And with that, you've got to have a little bit of flair. Reasons are not something you do twice in your life and expect to be great. Okay. The fun part I always say about judging is it's a very level playing field. You get out of judging what you put into it. Reasons are something you can do all the time. Reasons are something you can do every day. Reasons are something you can do while you're driving your car. For you older kids, you can work on these things at home. Make up a set. I just made up a set. You can do a lot of those things at home. Okay. So,
Seth, I laugh when you say that because I was on a dairy judging team for college, and we used to make sets up about chairs.
oh, yeah. You can do them on pencils. You could do them on, drive by and you see 4 cows out in the pasture and you're like, whatever, I'll give it a shot. You can make it up. It's not bad. It's just getting your voice acclimated to doing a set of reasons, giving a set of reasons. Okay. Reasons are supposed to be professional. I would say reasons need to be between a minute and 10 seconds and a minute and maybe 35, 40 seconds. Okay. That's probably on the long end, but it's a very crisp, professional reason of why you placed the class how you placed it. Now, one thing I always love to joke about is no matter how good you are in reasons, if you can't see them off the floor, it's an uphill battle because you're just lying through your teeth in a set of reasons if you can't see them off the floor. So you definitely need to um work on seeing the stock first, then talking the stock. But you can definitely work on reasons at home. You can work with reasons on with your parents. Okay. And I get a lot of kids. I probably listen to 40 kids throughout the state of Ohio that send me voice recorded sets. My phone data is crazy because I'm a livestock judging coach. So I've got hundreds of recorded sets of my judging team. You can do the same thing. I always tell kids when you're starting out, some tricks to the trade, type it, type the set. Okay. Save it in a Word document, type the set. Okay. Why do I say that? Well, because you can backspace and delete what you don't like, add things, take notes on it. Okay, I need to pause here. I have like my own way of doing it when I type it. Like if I give it a dot, 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 that means I'm taking a big pause. Okay, or I tab down, that's the next paragraph, which is like I would tab down between this portion, the top pair, and the middle pair. And then I'd tab down between the middle pair and the bottom pair, just so it gives me that illusion in my mind. Okay, I need a pause. I need to move on to the next one. Pause, need to move on to the next one. Or if I give it a period, 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 that means I'm having more of an exaggerated pause where maybe I put one dot. That's kind of like a real brief kind of stutter because your voice and your power should be high in your grant boxes, and your voice should come down like you're kind of sorry you got to do it in the fault boxes. And then I'm back up here when I'm talking about grants, and then I'm back down here when I'm talking about criticisms, and then I'm back up here, and then I'm back down here, and that one's last. Okay. So your voice is kind of like a heartbeat rhythm, okay, if you will. You're excited, your voice is powerful and upbeat, then you're back down, back up, back down, back up, back down. Okay. Terminology comes with more sets. Terminology is very species specific. We could do a week on just terminology. Okay. So I'm not going to spend all night with terminology. I try to be very terminology specific. So, like Brian said earlier, take notes. How does Seth say that? Okay, these are recorded. You can go back and listen to my verbiage when I'm talking about heifers versus when I talked about pigs versus when I talked about goats and sheep last night. Okay, excuse me. You talk about pattern in sheep. You talk about skeleton in hogs. You talk about, you know, um, rounder bodied in terms of sheep, things like that, terminology wise, I think can help you guys a great deal. Okay. Just listening and picking it up. Okay. Listen to a guy on the mic at a show, unless he's talking about Shaggy and Swaggy, and then shut your ears off and stop listening because that doesn't really mean anything. I really hate that this judging thing's getting to that point where terminology is, I even have to question, like, what does that even mean? But true facts, make sure you stay with that. Okay. Now, just a few things before I give you a couple examples of a set of reasons, because I've got a couple that I've got from OSU that they put on YouTube back in the day. They're older, but they're a really nice generic, get you through, understand. Okay. But when you give a set of reasons, you're going to come into a room. It's just going to be you and one other person. Most likely, you're going to stand let's say 10 feet away. If you're kind of a booming voice like me, you know, if you're a little softer spoken, if you're not quite as vibrant with your voice, you can be a little bit closer, but I'd probably stay, that 10 feet range. Okay. You usually put your arms behind your back, be very professional, um, and deliver that set of reasons with confidence. Okay. One big thing I always tell youngsters that have never done it, or even older, senior level, I guess, kids that haven't done it, they get up there and they're nervous. So what do they start doing when they're nervous? They start swaying. If I sat here and I talked all night like this, would that not get annoying to you guys? It would get annoying. Okay. Nobody wants to do that. You need to look right into their soul, essentially. One thing that I teach kids is if you look at the top of my hat, that's why I'm wearing a hat tonight. But if you look at the top of my hat, okay, it looks like you're looking into my eyes, but you're not. So if you're a little nervous, those are some tricks to the trade that can maybe help you in that regard. Okay. But 10 feet away, hands behind your back, look sharp, present with power. The only way you get power and presence and confidence is doing it. Doing it. If you don't do it, don't expect to be good. Okay. You get out of livestock judging what you put in to livestock judging. Okay. So I don't know. Is this sharing, Brian? Can you see this screen?
So we are still seeing the Microsoft Word document.
Well, that ain't good.
You're gonna have to stop.
Um,
I would stop
I'm
share
gonna
there and then.
stop sharing
Yep.
then, and I'm going to share this screen. Okay, now
All
you
right.
can see
Yep.
it, right?
Yep. We're seeing Jack Boyer.
Yeah, Jake Boyer. Okay, so Jake Boyer. All right, if anybody's ever heard of Boyer Core, one of the, well, I would say probably the biggest show cattle places in the nation right now. They're right out here in Seville, Ohio. They've got a ranch out in Iowa. He was at Ohio State back in 2000 and I think 12. Okay. This is a set of reasons on market hogs from the North American Livestock International Livestock Expo. Okay. So what I want you guys to do, hopefully that the sound works and everything, but what I want you guys to do is not freak out when you hear it. I just want you to hear the rhythm of the set. His opening, he talks through the stock, describes the stock, moves on. Okay. So this is going to be a minute and 50 seconds. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to push play. Brian, if for some reason the sound is not coming through, just yell out at me.
Okay. We're not hearing it, Seth.
Daggone it. How the heck do I do that? How do I do that? I can hear it on mine. I wonder if I can't.
Should be able to.
Yeah, you know how?
Put the link in the chat and see if I can try it that way.
Click the link in the chat. Oh, put the link in the chat. Okay. Let me move some. Let's hope that works. Boy, that thing is Yep, that was it too. Daggone it. Okay, paste. Send. Why is it not sending? Oh, I'm over. I'm over how many words I can put in it or characters I can put in it. Daggone it. How do I want to do that? Should have tried this earlier, Brian. Um, can you maybe if I stop sharing, why don't you can you do it and put it in, like, if you do a Google search on Ohio State livestock judging reasons on YouTube, you'll find this. I guess I'll stop sharing and you guys get to see my beautiful face. Daggone it. Sorry about that, guys. I thought it would play through it. Tomatoes, closed captions, YouTube. Did you find it, Brian? Yeah, I can't hear yours either. Well, okay. I guess to further move on, I guess you guys that are listening, okay, there's probably 5 or 6 YouTube videos from that team at Ohio State on YouTube. If you guys punch in Ohio State University livestock judging team reasons YouTube in Google, you'll get a boatload of those. You guys can listen to those, I guess, on your own time. It just gives you a representation of what a reasons set sounds like. Okay. So I'm sorry that did not work. I don't know why. I don't feel as bad as I could have, Brian, if you can't figure it out either. That makes me feel better. Okay, guys, so this is what we're gonna do. Okay. You guys that are at home, all right, I hope that you guys remember that format I showed you as far as how to set up a notebook. I would advise doing it as we're going through. We're going to judge a class together. We're going to judge a performance heifer class together. Okay, so I'm going to talk through performance data. Okay, because I really haven't done that a bunch, so I'm gonna talk through performance data a little bit with you guys. We're going to judge the class. I'm going to let it roll through. I mean, so we're going to take some time here.
Yell at me. Just go ahead and yell at me.
To do that. So just follow along with me here. I'm going to share. Trying to share screen will stop other participants' computers. Okay, sure. Cool. Okay. All right. Do you guys see the National 4-H Angus Heifer class on your screen? I hope you do. Okay. So this is actually the class and the scenario from the National 4-H contest. So the state champion of New York 4-H team gets the opportunity to go to the National 4-H contest. This is what those students got to see. Okay. So we're judging Angus heifers. All right. And it's 2024 in November. So you look at their date of birth, we're judging 1.5-year-old heifers. Okay. So let's read the scenario. Evaluate and rank these heifers based on their suitability as replacement candidates for a purebred Angus operation, focusing on a balanced combination of phenotype and genetic merit. Offspring are sold in 2 annual production sales with significant feed and labor resources readily available. Okay. So what does that scenario mean to you? All right. This whole first thing, okay, cool. Perform purebred Angus operation. We understand we're looking for suitable replacement candidates for a purebred Angus operation. Okay. Focusing on a balanced combination of phenotype and genetic merit. So essentially, we're saying, awesome. We've got phenotype and genetic merit. That's what we want because it needs to be a tandem of both. It can't just be genetics. It just can't be phenotype. It needs to be both. Okay. So the last sentence there, sold in annual production sales with significant feed and labor resources readily available. Why do they put that at the end of that? They are telling you that feed, they got a lot of it. Labor resources to a cow person, that's telling me birth weight and calving ease. Yes, it's a priority. Let's keep it in check. But at the same time, I've got a lot of resources to actually help those cows if they need that. Okay. So as we get down through here, I know obviously we hadn't really talked about a lot of this. Okay. I'm going to give you some, not to go in depth crazy on these values, because sometimes I think for youngsters, it's so much better just to understand what these things mean. So let's start at the left. That is calving ease direct, CED, calving ease direct. Okay. They give you breed averages down here at the bottom. If I could get it to stop highlighting everything. Anyway, right here, that's calving ease direct breed average is a 7. We want what in calving ease? Low numbers or high numbers? I want high numbers in calving ease. Okay, because that means good. All right. So the best one in terms of calving ease would be number 1. Okay. Number 2, number 3 are both better than breed average. Number 4 is below breed average. Okay. So she's maybe got a little bit of a strike. What I like to do is circle the best one and square the worst one on data. So it just gives you at the end an illusion of which cattle are better and which ones aren't. So I would circle number 1's calving ease. I'd square number 4. Okay. Then what's BW? Birth weight. Okay. Do we want birth weight high or do we want birth weight low? Well, I think within moderation,
trade-offs,
but
the
low.
longer they drive. I like the tri-color barrel to win.
This is breed average.
Structured
Number 1's high.
and drives with more flex and stability.
So number 1, 2, and 3 are all below breed average, which is good. Number 4 kind of comes with the turf. She's the worst in terms of her calving ease.
All right, so Seth, I just got told that. So, are you guys not seeing the Angus heifers?
Well, I asked that.
Oh, there she goes. She sees it now. I just saw it in the chat.
So we're good.
You're good.
It says I'm sharing this screen. I hope I am. Okay. So then birth weight. So the 4 heifer, I would square her again. Okay. I would square her again. All right. She's the problem when it comes to birth weight as well. Okay. Now birth weight on 1, 2, and 3, it's kind of 6 half dozen the other on those 3. There's not very much of a difference there, but I would circle number 3 as being the best. Okay. Because she's the lowest. Now, WW, that means weaning weight. Okay. We want these high. We want them high. Okay. We want fast growing livestock, right? Okay. So the breed average is 60. And that's why I always like to tell kids to make sure they look at the breed average. Okay. Because breed average, everything is either at breed average or better than breed average. Okay. So really all I'm doing is taking into account these numbers. 4 started as a bigger calf. Her birth weight was high. She started as a bigger calf. Those cattle usually are faster growing cattle. Okay. But you also have to get them on the ground first. Okay. But I would circle her, which should be to no surprise. And I guess the worst is 3. I would square her. Okay. Then I get over here to YW, which is yearling weight. She's the fastest growing here. She's the fastest growing here. I'd circle her again. Okay. And I'd square number 3. Okay. Milk figures, everything is above breed average, which is great. And then the big thing I want to teach you guys, these dollars. Okay, these dollars. The Angus breed has thousands of EPD data points. Okay, they've got so many columns. It's insane how many they have. So sometimes instead of understanding exactly what that is, just understand, do we want more money or do we want less money? That's what I want you to think in the back of your mind. If you see a dollar B, okay, dollar C, dollar EN, dollar M, dollar anything, okay, just think, I want them high, okay? So in the dollar signs here, 3 is the worst. She's below breed average, okay? 1 is the best. Dollar B, which is dollar beef. Number 1, circle that one. She's the best. Number 4 is actually the worst. Okay. Then dollar C, the only one that's below breed average is number 4. So she's the worst in dollar B. She's below breed average. She's below breed average in dollar C. She's right at breed average in milk. And the only thing she's got going for her is these 2 growth figures are high, and that is understandable, okay, because she's a bigger calf. All right. So one thing I want you guys to think about in a scenario like this, in a set of data, it's not about the outliers, it's about the consistencies. Okay. It's about the consistencies. All right. So if you had this thing circled, okay, and you look at these as consistencies, which one do you guys looks consistently the best, or consistently she's first in some, she's second in some, all the way down through there, not alarming anyone? That is number 1. Okay, number 1, the best calving ease, very good birth weight, second best weaning weight, second best yearling weight, the best in milk, the best in all of her dollar figures, I believe. Yes, all of her dollar figures, she is the best. Okay. So you'd never place a class off of data, but this is what I'm going to tell you. I teach this to my kids. You place what the data tells you. So we're going to place it off of data. But then when you look at the livestock, don't deviate more than a pair switch. Okay. So by that, if I mark this 1, 2, 3, 4, which I'm not saying I am, if I marked it 1, 2, 3, 4, the worst that number 1 could do is be second when I look at the stock. Okay. The worst that or the best that number 4 could do when I look at the stock is third. Okay. What it does in the livestock judging game is really keep you from busting classes. Okay. Pair switches win, busts don't. Okay. So I would write number 1 down right here as the best one, because she is the consistent best one. Okay. Consistently the best. Okay. Then I'm kind of looking at these other ones. The 4 heifer is alarming to me because the only 2 figures she is good at is her weaning weight and yearling weight. Okay. Which is a little problematic. All right. The 3 heifer, she's good here in terms of calving ease, good in birth weight. She's right at breed average in her weaning weight. She's right at breed average almost in terms of her yearling weight. Okay. Really good milk figure. The below average in dollar EN, she's right at breed average in terms of her dollar beef. She's just above breed average in dollar C. So she's not really making me crazy, but the only thing she's below breed average in is dollar EN. Okay. Which is dollar energy. Okay. The number 2 heifer, she's good in terms of her calving. He's good birth weight. She's solid here in terms of her weaning weight. She's solid in her yearling weight. Third in terms of milk. Third in terms of dollar EN. Second dollar beef. Second dollar C. So the real thing I know I've got going for me is the one heifer. She's the best one on paper by a mile. Honestly, it's 3 and 4. Both are a little scary when it comes to what they got going on. The only thing the 3 heifer is really not great at is she's breed average, which is okay. But this dollar EN is kind of a little distracting. But the 2 heifer, pretty solid across the board. I'd probably put her second. I'd probably go 1, 2, maybe 3, 4, just because I don't have to worry about calving ease. She's still above breed average in terms of growth. She's the second best in milk. She's above breed average in dollar beef and dollar C, where 4 is not. So 3 and 4 could maybe flip back and forth off of a preliminary, but I actually might just count these things 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then when I look at the class, okay, I'm going to allow you guys, I'm going to leave it instead of waiting and letting it run all 4 and then running all of them as individuals. I'm just going to let it run through here. Can you guys see these heifers? Brian, do you see heifers?
I do.
Good.
Black Angus heifers.
Yep, good. Okay, so I'm just going to let this kind of run through here, and then I'll back it up, let you guys kind of take a gander at these 4 heifers. So on paper, we marked it 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And you don't want to deviate more than a pair switch. Okay. I'm going to show you how this works. Excuse me. I'm going to let it go through one more time here, and I'm going to talk through these heifers. Hmm. Okay, guys. So if you guys set up a notebook, like I showed you guys earlier, okay, and then we looked at the class. Let's place this class together. So, I think that when you look at these cattle, the one heifer is the best on paper. She's the best on the hoof. Okay, when you study this female, um, really good in terms of her head and neck extension, very feminine, in the way she's put together. Okay. Very good here. If you watch the beef video, I like to use this angle a ton, guys, a ton. Okay. We talk about shoulder shapes and we talk about feminine neck shape and body shape. This heifer is very, very good up front. Okay. It's so easy to see how 3's the big bodied one, right? But what's this big coarse shoulder sitting in here? That is what it is, a big coarse shoulder. She's a little bit more opened up in terms of her shoulder. She's not quite as feminine. The 2 heifer, she's a little bit more opened up in her shoulder, maybe not quite as attractive in terms of the way her neck sets into her. And the 4 heifer, yeah, kind of the same thing. So I hope you guys can see how this heifer lays in smooth. She ties in high out of the top side of her shoulder. She's very good there. Okay. As you get down through these videos, okay, you get into this front view like I showed you guys during the beef one. She is so good and fresh out through her chest and her shoulder and her neck, and her body shape reads really good. Okay. Let me, okay, sound, see how she moves. If you study her angles and her angularity of her knee, look at how much set she's got in her knee. I mean, this thing is really good fronted. And if you talk about one that's long and good in terms of her upper hip structure and then just her looseness of skeleton, and just athleticism out of her rear leg, what I'm saying is she's the best on paper. And then you put her on the hoof, and she's actually the best one there too. Okay. That's the female that is the fresh, feminine, sound structured. That's the good built, sound structured one with enough muscle. Okay. So she solidifies her place. I'm starting her. Okay. Then I think it kind of gets a little bit more challenging because we place it 1, 2, 3, 4 on paper. And then I think the longer you study these cattle, I actually like the 3 heifer probably second. Okay. The 3 heifer probably second, which if you don't place her third on paper, you might put her third once you see the cattle, right? You might put her third once you see the cattle because she's better than 4. Okay. So even then, you're still only a pair switch away. You're not busting the class, you see. That's why I was talking about, place them on paper, don't deviate more than a pair switch. But this heifer's body shape is enormous. She's a little bit more jammed up. She's a little more moderate, kind of a little fatter heifer in terms of her composition, but you cannot deny the body shape of this heifer, the width of skeleton. She's very genuine, still stout in her own right. Although she's a little bit more coarse and opened up in her shoulder than one would deem ideal, it's tough to put that kind of body shape on one and not have a little extra shoulder. Okay. So maybe I guess I maybe give her a pass because when you study this view of these cattle, I think she's the second soundest one in here. In terms of the relaxation of her knee, that hock, the way she utilizes it. From behind, she could set inside her skeleton just a little bit more. She maybe gets a little bit too opened up. Okay. But a really nice kind of a cow. I'd probably put her second. Okay. Now, I said I'm not deviating more than a pair switch. So by rights, honestly, the 2 heifers got to go third and 4's got to go last. But then when you study these cattle, I agree with that discussion. Okay. I still think 2 needs to go third, 4 needs to go last. Okay. 2 heifers, a very feminine, kind of an extended feminine female that maybe just runs out of gas, maybe not quite as stout, not quite as opened up as the top pair of heifers. Okay. The big beef I have with her is she gets just a little bit too much set in her rear leg. You guys see how she wants to duck her pins just a little bit, get a little bit more uncoordinated in terms of her rear skeleton. Okay. Excuse me. Still trying to get over being sick last week. But at the end of the day, still a very functional type build. All right. Very functional type build. And in terms of width, I think that's still a genuine made type of a female. Okay. Study her from behind. I still think she's genuine enough in terms of the way she's built. The 4 heifer had some issues on paper. And I think when you study this heifer out on the go, front skeleton, don't mind her. I don't really mind her body shape either. Don't really hate her there. Maybe gets a little bit more rigid in the way she uses her rear pastern, but not bad. But she is the shallowest hearted heifer right here in her forerib. She's just shallowest hearted. She is the narrowest constructed. Her and two are kind of fighting for that spot. But I would actually call the fore heifer probably the narrowest constructed. So at the end of the day, I would mark my card 1, 3, 2, 4. Okay. I still think all four of these heifers are good, but at the end of the day, I would mark it 1, 3, 2, 4. Now, on a set of reasons, what am I going to say? Okay, what am I going to say? Well, one, I would put in her box feminine, best built, soundest structured, really fresh. Why do I call her fresh? She's really good in terms of her head and neck and her brisket. She's really good in terms of her condition. Okay, very good in that regard. Very sound, very good, fundamental brood cow. Okay, what's three's Grant back over one? Overwhelming body shape. I mean, that thing is so massive, so maternal in her body shape. Definitely have to say that. She's another sound structured, good built female. Maybe comes in a little bit more moderate package, but she's really nice. She's big bodied. She's really cowy. Maybe gets a little fatter. Okay. Than she needs to be. You can see that in her brisket. She's a little bit plainer about her throat, and she's a little bit fatter in terms of her pone fat. So she could be freshened up just a touch in terms of her composition, but still a really good cow. What am I going to say for two? Why is two better than one or three? Well, I actually think the two heifer is a longer, more extended female. Look at the length of neck and the shape of her neck in comparison to three. So I could say this two heifer is longer and more extended about her head and neck, so much more feminine in the shape of her head and neck. Okay. And she is a little bit fresher in terms of her condition. She's not quite as fat. She's a little more genuine in terms of her body condition. But unfortunately, she wants to get weak and easy in terms of her top line. She wants to get, off in terms of her upper hip and just a little more preset and round out of her rear skeleton. But down low, she's still the deeper hearted, which is right here. I mean, just look at the distance of my mouse right here. That compared to this. Okay. That's where true rib cage is. All this back here is fill. Yes, we need fill. Yes, we need depth of body. And this heifer's got depth of body through her rear rib and flank. But her heart is a little concerning. Not quite as just overwhelming in terms of her body shape. Still think this is a higher performing heifer. This heifer's got some issues in terms of her paper and on the hoof. But, you can grant the fore heifer that maybe she's a touch denser featured. You can kind of see up through her forearm and up through her front foot that she's a little stouter featured. She's still another feminine female. I think that one's head and neck reads feminine. But the end of the day, she's the most problematic in terms of her genetic script, which means her data. And then, she's just the tightest hearted, narrowest constructed heifer out through her pen. I'll leave her last. Thank you. Okay. But those are some things you could put in those boxes to help formulate a set of reasons. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope. Hope so. Okay. Does anybody need to? I'm just going to stop sharing. We've been at this an hour. Okay. I need questions. I need to know what I need to reiterate, maybe go in depth a little bit more on. So if you guys have questions, hit up the chat box. I'm not seeing anything in the chat box here at the current moment. I know reasons can be a little scary, guys, but I hope that's at least a nice brief outline of what reasons can be or what they should be. Got questions? This is the most quiet group I've talked to out of New York.
Any questions, guys?
Brian, is there something that you think I need to go more in depth on?
No, I think that's good, right? I think you did a great general overview, and I think that's what they needed is to
I
understand.
I don't want to scare them off too fast on reading
Yeah.
and get too crazy in depth.
Right. I think that's one of the things that they definitely need. And I will share the links to all the videos, the Ohio State ones that you
Yep.
had with them in an email at the end of the week. I'm kind of saving everything for one big email instead of multiples.
No, I get it. Yeah, and guys, those reasons are from like 2012, so they're maybe a little outdated. But for you guys that are beginners and maybe never given sets, it's a great opportunity for you guys to see the structure of a set of reasons, understand the structure um, of a set of reasons. Does each species have a scorecard? I don't have any idea what a scorecard is for dairy does, to be honest. I've never judged a dairy goat in my life. As far as no, I think I can say no to that. Essentially what you're doing is you are the scorecard. Okay. You're the one saying if they're good or they're bad. You're not necessarily circling, well, in terms of their build, are they a 5 or are they a 4, whatever. I think does that answer your question? Give me a thumbs up, Andrew.
Yeah, I think in dairy they have the PDCA scorecard where they have the udder is worth 40 points, feet and legs are
No,
worth this, frame is
yeah,
worth
we
that.
don't
And I
have
think
that.
dairy goats has the same thing. So
We
yeah,
do,
there
we do
is
not
not
have
anything
that
like
in the
that in
livestock
livestock.
judging world.
Okay. Hey, this is Andrew. I just unmuted.
Yep.
There's too much to type in the chat box.
That's all right. Ask
Yeah.
away, buddy.
So I guess my question comes down to if there isn't a scorecard, what is out there so that we can help kids align our thinking with what's acceptable for industry standards? Because everyone's going to have a different standard. Like, how does that all get aligned if there's no scorecard? I'm sorry, I come from the dairy world. And when
No,
you
and I
know what
love
mean?
the question because I'd love the answer myself. Because I've been saying that for a lot of years. The one thing I can tell you as evaluators, we have to think, okay, as coaches, I'll talk to you as a coach, Andrew, is like,
Yes.
you know, if I was sitting down and coaching my kids, market livestock, what's the priorities of market livestock? Well, muscle needs to be the number one placing factor is muscle and composition, then build and structure in market animals. In breeding livestock, good built, sound structured with enough muscle because, you know, the old mentality of, you know, the bulls bring the power, the bucks bring the power, the boars bring the power. That's how through time we've always done it. You know, build your females so fundamental, so sound, so good built that you can use a male that's a little more extreme to do some things. So as far as I think it's more of opinionated. It's more opinionated than it needs to be. But one thing I've tried to eliminate, you know, when I judge shows a lot, people come up say, you know, it's always the Cardinals, you know, kiss of death, I guess, if you will, that somebody comes up and says, well, it's one man's opinion. No, this isn't an opinion. This is a science. And judging is a science. And I'm not a believer in opinions when I'm judging a show. I'm not opinionated. I'm telling you that's either square or that's not square. That's sound or not sound. And that's all based off of bone structure and angularities. But as a coach, one thing I tell 4-H coaches, FFA coaches, you have to be dedicated as a coach to priorities. And the priorities of market livestock are muscle and composition are the foremost things that are important. Then build, then structure. Because the generations we're playing with right now, there's a lot of jackpot shows, lots of shows where judges get on a microphone and make excuses for the narrow ones in a market show. Makes no sense to me. They have to be square enough skeleton. They have to be genuine enough at a jackpot. I'm not using one that's lower construction, you know, looks like this. I'm using the one that's square in their skeleton. Maybe they're not the most extreme, but they're square. There's too many people doing this. They're using these narrow ones that are really good looking, and they're taking the priorities and flipping them. And it makes no sense to me, because market hogs, market steers, market lambs, market goats. What is marketable product? That is muscle. So we have to keep squareness of skeleton. And as coaches, we as coaches have to be dedicated when we put contest classes together for our kids to practice, things like that. Have to stay grounded on those basic fundamentals, because that's what allows your kids to start seeing things consistently. As a coach, if we're all over the board, they can't get their minds right on what is good and what's not good. Okay. So stay really dedicated to being very consistent, stay grounded on those fundamentals. I've talked about the placing factors. I don't know if you've tuned into the sheep and goats and the cattle and the hogs, but there's actual placing factors on there that are like placing factors, and they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4 in that order that I've went over. So once these recordings come out, you can check that back out. I've got slideshows after slideshows of this stuff that I'm more than willing to share with anybody. I don't need paid for it, and I don't need anything like that. I'm all about just the betterment of the livestock world. So if you do need something material wise, feel free to email me at ebert.100@osu.edu. That's for all of you. If you guys need any information on anything, or coaches need some help, or call me. So I hope that answers your question, Andrew. And if it doesn't,
Yeah, that's very helpful. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Seth.
No problem. I know there is different species, but is there age groups? Are you talking, Matt? Are you talking about kids or the livestock? There's different species, but is there age groups? Are we talking about different ages of livestock? Livestock.
Matt,
Okay.
do you want to? I was gonna say, do you want to unmute Matt and ask your question for clarity?
So my question is there is there different age groups for like cows and lambs and that stuff? Is there like a year and a half old, 2 years old, 3 years old?
Yeah, good question. Okay. Yep. So anything you're going to see in the hog world is going to be under a year of age. Okay. Gilts and barrows. Anything you see anything else after that, there can be some differences. Now, there's a difference between Angus bred heifers, like you just judged, versus Angus heifer calves. Angus heifer calves might be under a year old. Breds are going to be 18, 19, 20 months. Most cattle producers are trying to breed cattle to calve out on their 2-year birthday. Okay. So breds are going to be year and a half old, kind of like those Angus heifers were. You're never going to judge cows in a livestock judging contest, or you shouldn't judge cows. Most of the time it's breds or calves, or like long open yearlings that are 14, 15 months old that don't have a calf inside of them. In the sheep world, you might get to see something that's touching a year old, but I don't think you probably will. I mean, maybe some like breeding ewes that maybe are getting up there, but you're never going to see 3-year-old ewes. Same thing in goats. You're going to see fresh, young, youthful yearlings in the goat world. That usually is what cuts it off. Market livestock, you think about it, market livestock, hogs should be between 5, 6, 7, 8 months of age when they're showing. Sheep, kind of the same thing. Goats, same thing. Cattle, we're showing steers that are, over a year or just at a year, you know. So those are relatively young animals, market animals. The breeding stuff, you can see a little bit of age difference, but really for the most part, you're never going to be judging ancient, mature animals, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Seth, I would just add, I think a lot of these kids are coming from the dairy world, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I always say once they give birth in the livestock world, they're no longer showing. They're no longer being judged.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
And
a
that's
good
very
point.
different than the dairy world. That's when they're just starting to get going. Right.
Yeah,
Even the
that's
dairy
honestly
goats.
a very good point, Brian. That's actually a good way to put it too. So yeah, once they have babies, they're cast out and they're put into the production and they don't get to show anymore. Good question, Matt. More
That answered
questions,
my question.
guys?
Thank you.
You bet. More questions? Good questions so far.
Any other questions quickly? And then we'll wrap up tonight. And we have just one more night tomorrow. We'll do some questions, actually looking at how do you understand questions. We'll add a contest. And then maybe we just do a little bit of review next tomorrow night. All right. Any last minute questions?
It's looking like no.
All right, guys. Thank you. We'll all see you tomorrow night. Come with your
Enjoy your
questions
evening,
for the
everybody.
wrap up.
We'll see you tomorrow.